I just wanted to say that I found Dr. Naffi after doing some research on AI, and I discovered her paper for UNESCO on deepfakes. And I was really struck by something that she said, which resonated with the EDI project, and I think what many of us are doing as educators at cultural institutions. And I'll quote from her paper: "The rise of AI augmented disinformation demands a fundamental shift in how education must equip citizens to combat it. This requires cultivating a deeper metacognitive literacy." And we usually talk about visual literacy, but she says metacognitive, "the ability to reflect on how we know what we know. Education's highest purpose thus becomes nurturing the uniquely human capacities that AI cannot replicate: contextual awareness, ethical reasoning, and collaborative creation of meaning." I think all of us talk about those things in our practices at our home institutions. So was a lot of resonance for me in what she wrote in that paper. Nadia is the Associate Professor of Educational Technology at the Université Laval in Montréal, not, or in Canada, Quebec?
In Quebec City. In Quebec City.
Quebec City, Quebec City. Through critical, ethical, and equitable approaches to lifelong learning, she examines how individuals, institutions, and communities can navigate uncertainty, rebuild trust, and act responsibly in increasingly AI-mediated information environments. She previously held the chair in educational leadership on innovative pedagogical practices in digital contexts at the National Bank, and she co-led the Education and Empowerment Axis at OBVIA, which is the International Observatory on the Societal Impacts of AI and Digital Technologies. It's my great pleasure, and I'm very grateful to you, Nadia, for joining us to hear what you have to say on AI and this latest information warfare that it's being used for.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna share my screen. So listen, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really grateful to be here for a conversation that I believe really urgent, because the material we will be examining today lives somewhere between war, toys, memes, synthetic media, and public memory. We all know in 1937, Picasso's Guernica forced the world to look at civilian suffering in war. Today, war images do not only come to us through monumental artworks or documentary photographs. They also circulate as AI-generated toys, memes, short videos, screenshots, and viral formats that can feel familiar, playful, and almost harmless. And that shift matters. War has always produced images, but today these images are generated faster, circulated wider, remixed endlessly, and made intimate through our feeds. So I want us to take them seriously, not because they are like innocent, but because they are crafted, and craft matters because craft is how meaning travels. But before I go further, I want to begin with 3 disclosure. So first, I'm Lebanese Canadian. So I happened to be in Lebanon when the latest aggression began. So the information disorder surrounding this war is not only a research object for me, it is also personal. Second, I became a professor in education technology. Before that, actually, I was a visual arts professor for 14 years in Lebanon. So today, when I look at all these images, at aesthetic choices, I look at them as someone who was trained to really read images and understand them. And third, and I want to say this very carefully, the more time I have been spending inside this material, the more impressed I have become by it, by the craft, by their narrative intelligence, by the way these objects translate war into something that is collectible, shareable, emotional, and repeatable. That is precisely why we need to read them seriously, the way we would read any culture object that reshapes public perception. And I want to start with the objects immediately. So my first example, it will be the first video that I will be sharing with you. As you watch this first clip, I'm asking you to notice how quickly you understand what it wants you to feel. Notice the format, notice the pace, notice the absence or presence of explanation. Notice how a conflict that would usually require geopolitical context becomes immediately legible. In other words, I need you to watch the content, but really watch how it was designed. So let's start. So yes, we are talking about war here. And now another one. Again, I do not want us to look at it like we're saying, do I agree or disagree? I just want us to start really looking at it and think about what is this video actually doing. What you just watched was made with artificial intelligence. It depicts a real conflict. It is rendered in the visual language of children's play. And across versions and platforms, these clips have been viewed millions of times. So a children's story, a war, millions of views. Within weeks, this content broke into mainstream coverage. So Forbes, The Independent, Radio Free Europe, CBC Kids News, yes, CBC Kids News. So when war content enters news through Lego aesthetics, something has shifted in the public meaning environment. These Lego videos are our entry point. From there, I will be widening the lens to synthetic media more broadly. So I'm going to talk about deepfakes, clone voices, synthetic leaders, and AI-generated political imagery. So let's start with the first phenomenon, like what we saw with the Lego videos. Inside the pro-Iranian information space, short AI-generated capsules circulate in several registers. We have the Lego-style stop motion, we have anime sequences, and we have cinema and video game pastiche. They borrow the grammar of entertainment to stage a geopolitical conflict. They live where attention now lives. So on X, Telegram, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, YouTube, Truth Social, and other short-form feed-based platforms. And as you know, scale matters. We are not talking about a few isolated amateur videos. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of views per clip and an output volume that only large language models, so AI, image models and video models makes possible. This is organized symbolic production, and it is native to the algorithmic feed. The main actor here, the one who started with the Lego thing, is Explosive Media, also known as Akhbar Infiraji. They describe themselves as the Lego Resistance Front. That name is almost funny until you really realize how effective the work is. They present themselves as a grassroots creative collective, not a formal state operation. They are not saying we produce propaganda. They are saying we produce counter narrative. That difference matters because it tells us what kind of legitimacy they are claiming. They describe their work as poetic resistance. And that phrase is doing a lot because poetic means this is not only information, and resistance means this is not only entertainment. They are claiming a moral and aesthetic position. They are saying dominant Western media narratives are distorted, and our work provides a counterweight. Whether we agree with that position or not, the self-description is analytically important. They are asking audiences to read these objects not as a deception, but as correction. That is why, exactly actually why they are powerful. In a recent interview with the producers, they described their mission in 4 terms. They talked about critical thinking, narratement, cultural diplomacy, and defending humanity. Now, narratement is an interesting word because it fuses narrative and entertainment, meaning plus momentum. A message that can travel because it does not look like a message trying too hard. Their stated goal is to make Western audiences ask questions, look critically at their governments, and see a more humane image of Iran beyond political headlines. We do not have to accept, again, the self-description at face value, but we do have to understand the strategy. Here I can borrow from UX design. These videos reduce friction. They are quick to decode, easy to feel, visually memorable, and almost effortless to share. That is the craft. The message is not only communicated, it is designed as an experience of reception. As I was watching this ecosystem evolve, I saw 4 stages. Stage 1 was when we start with facts. So exclusive media leads with short documented capsules in Lego format. Music only, no voiceover, the format does the work. Stage 2, we moved to chorus. So other producers joined. Rap enters, voice enters, narrations enters, and the register shifts from showing to arguing. Then we move to address, and the videos begin speaking directly to Americans. Iranians love you. We are both victims of the same government. And then stage 4, we have the spillover. So the format crosses borders, including into Lebanon, where it becomes part of a domestic information war. The key point is that each new stage does not replace the previous one. It simply layers onto it, and the ecosystem thickens. I'm going to go a bit more deeper in each of the stages with a few examples. So the early clips are striking because of what they withhold. No narrator, no long argument, no caption explaining the moral, just Lego, animation, music, and selected facts. That restraint is part of the craft. Then the chorus joins, and other creators add rap, voice, and explicit narration. That shift matters. It marks the move from witnessing to arguing. Once the form works, others can pick it up, intensify it, and aim it at maybe different publics. So the format becomes portable. And I'm going to play an example here for you.
Trump wanted the Nobel. Maria Corina gave him the medal. Same thing, right? Maria gave the medal. Trump gave us the war. Baby wants his bottle. Baby wants some more. Maria gave the medal. Trump gave us the show. Is this peace? Is this peace? Baby, don't know. 1 blood, 35 plays, 12 days of play. Boom, go the black star ran far away. 7,000 miles for his favorite toy. Deserved the Nobel. Yeah, Trump wants joy. Committee said, not have time for you. So Maria said, here, this goal will do. RFK Jr.
So you got an idea about this stage 2. And then there was this important shift. So the message is no longer only about the conflict. It becomes about a relationship between 2 civilian populations. Iranians love Americans. We are both victims of the same government. And I'm going to show you a short clip also.
We do not hate you, people of the West. We see you through the smoke of what they call progress. We have watched from across the ocean, from behind their walls. And what we see is a people who deserve better than what rules them. This is not a war cry. This is a wake-up call. Open your eyes, brothers and sisters. The hands that wave your flag are not the hands that hold you. Listen. We love Americans. We love your soul. The land of dreamers. The brave, the bold. But something sits on top of you. Dressed in your name. Spending your children's blood like a game. We love Americans. Oh yes we do. But the ones who speak for you don't speak for you. Wake up before the morning's gone. They built the cage like a game. We love Americans. Oh yes we do. But the ones who speak for you don't speak for you. Wake up before the morning's gone. They built the cage so slow. You thought it was your home. We do not celebrate your suffering. We mourn it the same way we mourn our own. Because your mother crying for a soldier's no different.
So this reframes the enemy, not a people, but a state. That is a classical political move, separate citizens from their leaders. But here it is executed in Lego, in seconds, with music, in a format light enough to forward before even our coffee gets cold. So this is effective engineering at scale. And I use that phrase descriptively. This is engineering done with real skills. Now, the audience response. We heard every word.
Yeah. We heard every word. Across the ocean, across the fire, across the lies. This ain't government to government. This is worker to worker. Family to family. Human to human.
A lot of us broke, but the cameras still flash. Whole country stressed while the billionaires laugh. Everybody fighting, nobody asking why. Young men getting buried while old men decide. You see the same fear, we see the same games. Different language, same pressure, same pain. You don't hate your people, that story getting old. Most of us just cold, overworked and controlled.
Man, this place tied. People barely hanging on. Half the country one emergency from everything.
So again, you get the message. So this is no longer geopolitical content only. It is intimacy at scale. And I want to pause on that phrase, intimacy at scale, because platforms are very good at manufacturing the feeling that a message was made for us, even when it was made for millions. That is one of the most powerful features of contemporary information warfare. It can feel personal without being private. Stage 4 is where the format becomes dangerous in a different way. So other actors watching the Iranian ecosystem succeed adopt the same aesthetic logic. In Lebanon, a broadcaster airs an Angry Bird-style satiric video depicting Naim Qasim and Hezbollah's fighters as game characters battling Israeli pigs. The visual logic borrows from the same grammar, but the borrowers, those who borrowed that, the channel, did not adequately reckon with one detail. Naim Qasim is not only a political figure, he is also a Shia clerk and a political leader. So what may have been intended as political satire was read by many as religious insult. A satirical format became a sectarian flashpoint. So the video was ordered removed. Then came the counter-war. The response did not come as text or a speech or something. It came in the same format. Angry Birds with Christian figures, Trump and pro-US Lebanese media figures depicted as paid traitors. And I'm going to show you this very quickly, the example. So what we have here is actually the same aesthetic weapon that was fired in both directions. What happened in those 72 hours was really a domestic information war conducted almost entirely in cartoons. This slide shows something that is crucial. The message lands and then the audience amplifies it. The secondary distribution network is the audience itself. These are not all Iranian accounts. These are American users, commentators, veterans, analysts, ordinary citizens actually who receive the videos. Then they decode the strategy, they argue about them, celebrate them sometimes, and forward them. So some of them, they were saying, and I put out some of the quotes, I don't see propaganda. All I see is the truth. Others say they studied the audience Fox News built and they delivered. Checkmate. Or the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and my friend makes banger music videos. Another said a 5-year-old can comprehend them. And that's what I think they think about the US administration. That is the measure of success. The content does not need everyone to agree. It needs people to react, interpret, circulate, and keep it alive. And this is the strength of this format. So what are we actually looking at? Not classical propaganda objects, not ordinary war memes or painting or other. We're looking at something else. So I was thinking about a definition or something to describe what's happening, and this is something that I'm proposing. So these are platform native synthetic formats that frame conflict through narrative and affect. They are short, emotionally coded, culturally familiar, and built to make events instantly legible, memorable, and mostly shareable. The key word is format. The unit of analysis is not the post, it's the format. That is the move I want us to make. The Lebanese case makes this very visible. The actors changed, the message changed, the target changed, but the format held. And here is the argument of the webinar of today. Today's information warfare does not move only through spectacular fakes or other. It also moves through everyday culture objects, aesthetic forms, familiar formats that quietly shape narratives, normalize positions, and re-engineer public perception. And that last phrase matters because public perception is not shaped only by what people believe to be true. It is also shaped by what they remember, what they laugh at, what they share, what they feel, and what they stop questioning. The response cannot be primarily technical. It has to be cultural, which means it has to involve the institutions you represent. In the following slides, I will move through 5 steps. First, I will talk about frames before facts, then about aesthetics as narrative weapon, and I will be talking about moving from Lego to deepfakes. Third, I'm going to talk about propaganda and synthetic warfare. Fourth, counter visibility, and fifth, why cultural institutions are not peripheral. The point today is not to condemn the format. It is really to learn how to read what each format is doing politically, because this is not only about detecting fake content, it's really about how publics learn to interpret reality when reality arrives dressed as entertainment. So the first movement, before facts. This is the conceptual foundation. Before people decide what they think about a fact, they often encounter the frame that tells them what kind of fact it is. So it's a tragedy, a joke, an injustice, a humiliation, a victory. The frame arrives first. The fact catches up later, if it catches up at all. Entman gives us the key. To frame is to select certain aspects of a perceived reality and make them more salient, promoting a problem definition, a causal interpretation, a moral evaluation, and sometimes a recommended solution. So framing is not the opposite of facts. Framing is how facts become visible, ordered, and morally legible. A fact does not arrive naked. It arrives dressed in a frame. And the question is always, who dressed it, and for what occasion. And once AI can generate endless images, voices, styles, and micronarratives, the struggle over framing becomes faster, cheaper, and much more visually sophisticated. And here is the shift. The older battle that we had was about establishing facts, true versus false, argument and demonstration, and long-form text. We built institutions for that battle: journalism, libraries, courts, peer review. But the new battle is also about engineering the conditions of reception: visible versus invisible, memorable versus forgettable, affect, rhythm, format, shareable versus inert, and speed, short, generative, capsule. The fact does not disappear. Its frame is what is being fought over. I'm gonna paraphrase Papa Charisi here. Effective publics are networked publics that are formed, connected, disconnected, and mobilized through sentiment, storytelling, and shared affect. So we have indignation, irony, grief, belonging. These videos do not circulate only because they inform. They circulate because they connect. They give people a feeling they can actually forward. And in a platform economy, as we all know, a feeling that can be forwarded is already a political force. And in this ecosystem, the forward button becomes a political act. It's a very tiny button, but a very large consequence. Most people do not think that they are actually participating in information warfare when they repost a video. They think they are sharing something funny, moving, clever, outrageous, or true. But circulation is participation. The platform does not care whether you forward with approval, outrage, or irony. The platforms that we all have counts movement. And the strongest capsules braid emotional registers very efficiently. So when we have indignation, it says, this should not stand. When we have irony, what irony says? It says, relax, it's just a joke, so you can share it. Grief says, witness this pain with us, right? Or we're witnessing your pain. Belonging says, we see what others refuse to see, and we're together in seeing all of this. So most viral capsules combine at least two of these in under 15 seconds. That is not amateur work, that is craft. And once we see the craft, we stop treating the content as simply random internet noise. The second movement is aesthetic as narrative weapon, from Lego to deepfake. So now that we have seen how these formats move affect, we need to look at the form itself. So why Lego? Why anime? Why video game pastiche? Why does war increasingly arrive in a language of play? This is where my former visual arts teacher self becomes very useful, because we know no aesthetic choice is actually innocent, right? Like especially not this one, not in the war. Lego creates a semiotic collision. So on one side, we have childhood, the toy, modular play, innocence. And on the other, we have destruction, military force, geopolitical death. This collision is the point. The aesthetic does not simply soften the violence. It re-embeds it in a familiar visual system. The viewer does not quite know whether to admire the craft or condemn the message. That instantly, the video that is doing political work. And the best visual propaganda often works there, right? In the split second before we know what stance to take. And I'm gonna show you a very short clip, very quickly, a clip. I'm gonna also share a part of it. So Lego does three things. First, it simplifies without neutralizing, as you saw. Like making the scene immediately legible to anyone scrolling past. We don't even need words, right? We have the musics, we have the images, etc. Second, it reduces geopolitical actors to manipulable figurines. And third, it increases memorability through contrast. So we have childhood iconography embedding the violence deeper than even the news image would. That is the form doing argumentative work before the caption arrives. So the caption does not need to do much, right? The toy has already made the argument strong enough for us to remember the message. But Lego, and I told you I'm going to move from Lego to other format. Lego is not the only mod that is being shared. We have different aesthetics that is doing different political work. We have, like the Lego world, we went through it, but we also have anime and blockbuster mode, where we are trying actually to raise the conflict into mythic combat, so allegiance forms before analysis does. We have different publics, we have different effects, we have all these different images that are being shared, but we have the same interpretive horizon. This is not aesthetic chaos, it is diversification that is being done here. Schiffman gives us the language to take memes seriously. So memes are not closed messages. They are replicable cultural formats. They are units of public participation. They are available to be appropriated, recirculated, and folded into broader chains of interpretation. And that matters because a meme is not only something you read, it is something you can reuse, a template, a grammar, right? A container, other that can take and fill, translate, remix, and forward. Read this way, the Lego clip is not just a statement, it is a format. That is what makes it powerful. And as we saw in Lebanon, that is also what makes it escalatory. Format travel faster than consent. We began with Lego because Lego makes the format very visible. But Lego, as I said, is not the whole story. It is one entry point into a wider synthetic media condition. The Lego videos are not deepfakes in the strict sense, right? They do not impersonate a real person saying or doing something they never said or did. Because, and a very small parenthesis, a deepfake, when I talk about deepfake, it's a synthetic image, audio or video that mimics a real person's voice or likeness so convincingly that it can make them appear to have said or done something they did not do. And this has been evolving with artificial intelligence and generative everything that is happening with AI. So Lego videos are not deepfakes, right? But they are synthetic media, AI-generated cultural objects that stage political reality. That distinction matters. And this is where Vakary and Chadwick's point becomes useful. Synthetic and deepfaked media are not only tools of falsification, they can also become vectors of satire, denunciation, and counter-narrative, reshaping how political reality is staged. So the question is not only, is this fake? The question is actually, what is it doing politically? With that lens in place, we can now look directly at some deepfakes at war. So one subset of the synthetic media, as I said, is the deepfake. And in March 2022, a low-quality deepfake, or we can call it cheap fake, of Zelensky appeared online, instructing Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms. It was crude. It was debunked quickly. The artifact failed, but the precedent did not. And that is the lesson. The first version of the technology is not the danger. The trajectory afterwards is. The deepfake did not need to succeed fully to announce that synthetic impersonation had now entered the battlefield. And since 2022, the trajectory is clear. We have faster production, cheaper, more culturally coded, and harder to detect. We have seen fake explosions, voice cloning, election interference, synthetic campaign materials, atrocity denial, wartime generative satire, and AI content that spreads before verification can actually catch up. The pattern matters more than any single item. Synthetic media is no longer a future risk. It is an active layer of conflict communication. One election case tells us something crucial about how norms shift. In Indonesia's 2024 presidential election, a candidate used generative AI to present himself as a softer, more accessible, more adorable figure than his record suggested. There is a political science sentence I never expected to say: cuteness can be a campaign technology, but it can. The AI imagery was criticized. It was described as manipulative. It raised concerns about the whole political perception, memory, and voter judgment, and yet the candidate won. So that is not a small detail. It shows that public criticism of AI-generated political image making does not necessarily stop its effectiveness. Sometimes the scandal becomes part of the visibility, and as we discussed from the beginning, visibility is key and is powerful. The norm shifted quickly. In 2024, many people still ask, should this be allowed? But now in 2026, in active conflict, much of the public reaction is much closer to look how good this one is. And that is the speed of normalization. And this is not only about, like some actors. During the last US election cycle, generative persuasion rose. AI-generated images, parody ads, synthetic political scenes, cheap fakes, mimic performances. Some were deceptive. Some were labeled. Some were obviously absurd. But all of them participated in the same transformation. Political communication is no longer only about speeches, ads, debates, press conferences. It is also about occupying the visual feed. In today's war, that logic has become part of the information battlefield. And these examples that I'm sharing here come from different political contexts and media ecosystems. So, and these are only few examples. Believe me, there are thousands and more, like hundreds of thousands of examples. But the point is not only each example individually. The point is the accumulation. Generative persuasion is becoming ordinary. That is the real shift. The public does not encounter synthetic content as a rare exception anymore. It encounters it as part of the everyday visual weather. And when something becomes weather, people stop noticing that the climate has changed. Here, the political figure herself shares an AI-generated image to warn people about AI-generative image used politically, right? That was an amazing moment because she shared her own image that was deepfaked. The synthetic image here was not hidden. It is displayed, it is used as an example, it was used as a warning. But even as a warning, it circulates, so visibility, right? It helps train the audience into this kind of aesthetic. This is one of the paradoxes of this moment because, like when you want to warn against synthetic media, you often have to show synthetic media. And when you do show synthetic media, you also help normalize its presence in the feed. This does not mean that we should, stay silent. It means warning has to be designed very carefully. We need not only fact-checking, but frame checking. And here are other examples of what is circulating today. Some are crude, some are convincing, some are ridiculous, some are funny, which is precisely why they travel. And I'm going to share with you one clip. we should not underestimate ridiculous content. Ridiculous does not mean politically irrelevant, right? Sometimes ridiculous is the delivery system. A joke can carry a worldview faster than any policy document ever will. As you all also saw with Trump Gaza's video, I won't play it, but I think most of you saw his plan for Gaza. It was ridiculous, but it got all the engagement, the reactions it wanted, and it sent a very clear message. And it was a cheap fake. We can identify at least 5 vectors of synthetic warfare. 1, we have the impersonation of leaders. 2, we have fabricated atrocity, so manufactured evidence of crimes that did not occur or denial of crimes that did. 3, we have the voice cloning, where you have fake intercepts, fake orders, fake hostage audio. We also have the battlefield deception, so synthetic combat footage stitched into real conflicts to claim victories or losses. And 5, and this is especially important for cultural institutions, satirical and dissident counter-narrative. The same generative tool can mock, mourn, deceive, expose, and mobilize. So the tool does not determine the politics. The ecosystem does, right? We need to remember that AI is a tool. Chesney and Citron named one of the most dangerous consequences, the liar's dividend. So once we have deepfakes, and we know that deepfakes exist, powerful actors can dismiss any authentic evidence as fabricated. The damage or the harm is not only the fake, right? The harm is the doubt cast on everything else. So today, every credible deepfake makes every inconvenient truth easier to deny. That is the long shadow of synthetic media, a weakened public relationship to evidence itself. And I don't know if you were following the Netanyahu case. I was following it very closely because it is one of the cases that I keep returning it when I want to show what is changing. So just to give a very quick summary of what was happening. So first, we had claims that emerged online that Netanyahu has been killed. They circulate before any official response. And then we had a claim that surfaced that Netanyahu appears to have 6 fingers in a press conference. So forensic crowds gather, people zoom in, threats multiply. And then we had a video that surfaced of Netanyahu in a cafe, apparently alive, showing 5 fingers. So people were starting, they were really sharing everywhere. Is it real? Is it AI? Is it stage? So millions of people became amateur forensic analysts. And then we had parody proliferates, right? So Netanyahu in the cafe, and now we have behind him Elvis Presley or other figures who were now in the same cafe, etc. And even a child's toy called Finger Magician.
Swap the hands, add more fingers, and unlock endless magic. Whoa. 7 fingers, 8 fingers, more magic. Finger Magician from Mocking Up.
So within few hours, the information space was flooded with so many versions that the original question becomes super difficult to hold in focus, right? So was he alive? Was the image real? What mattered actually? The thing that I was observing was, what was the distraction? Because with the whole thing that was happening online, the goal was not falsity, right? It was doubt, distraction, chaos. And then I was observing people on the feeds, on X, on Twitter, on Facebook, and other platforms where they were just becoming investigators and looking at the evidence instead of really focusing on what was happening and the whole aggression that was happening. So the attention itself was the target with this confusion. The third movement, now we can name the system, what we had seen so far are not isolated artifacts, right? They are part of a production and circulation system. This is where slowpaganda and computational propaganda become useful, not because they explain everything, but because they help us see the infrastructure behind the visible content. The visible content is what we watch, react to, and forward. The system is what makes it scale. And this is not a niche culture phenomenon. It sits inside a very wide risk landscape. Misinformation and disinformation are now top-tier global risks. Cybersecurity is also part of the same short-term risk environment. So when we talk about AI-generated war videos, we are not talking about internet oddities. We are looking at one visible expression of a much larger crisis of information integrity. The question is not only whether a piece of content is true or false. The question is how information environments are being shaped today with AI and with people who are using AI in a non-ethical way. Let's read this as a landscape, not as four separate definitions. So here what I represent, we have the vertical axis, that is the falseness of information, and the horizontal axis is the malicious intent. So when we talk about, because we have different terms to describe what's happening, right? So when we talk about misinformation, it's false or misleading information that can circulate without malicious intent. So someone received an information, they don't know that it's false, but they feel that it has to be shared, and they shared it without malicious intent. Disinformation adds intent. So it is false, manipulated, or fabricated information, and it targets deception, influence, or polarization. Malinformation is different. The information may be factually accurate, but it is weaponized through exposure or timing. And, what I'm adding here and what the Lego videos are trying to do is a fourth category that I'm calling sub-information, because sometimes manipulation is not what is said. Sometimes it is about what is withheld, what becomes visible, what remains invisible, what is made memorable, what is pushed out of public attention. So information disorder is not only about falsehood, it is also about intent, harm, visibility, and the strategic management of attention. And information warfare is often a struggle over visibility. The typology help us name the disorder. The slides help us name the machinery. So when we talk about computational propaganda, it helps us understand how platforms, automation, algorithms, and strategic attention work together. But this case also stretches the concept. What we are watching today is not only top-down coordination, right? It is more diffuse. We have militant, para-institutional, participatory, state-adjacent producers, networked relay accounts, ordinary users who translate, remix, and recirculate. And this is important. Not everyone in the chain needs to have the same intention, right? Some are committed producers, some are strategic amplifiers, some are ordinary users who simply find the content funny, moving, clever, or true. The system does not need everyone to agree on the object, right? On the information. It needs the format to keep moving on the different platforms. And we saw, like, we don't have a single author, no single comment. We have like a coordinated style, right? So people don't know each other necessarily, but we have this coordinated style that is happening, and that is why it is harder to govern, because you cannot respond only by looking for example, one source, one comment center, or one takedown target. The power is in the circulation. And then we talk about slowpaganda, which is a very useful recent term. So when we talk about slowpaganda, it's a generative propaganda produced quickly, cheaply, because when I talk about, the application with AI, most of them are like free. I have some that are like $15 or something like that. So it's accessible, right? So it's cheap, in great volume, optimized to saturate or orient the information environment. So not necessarily to persuade through depth, right? To shape the terrain of attention. The goal is not always your agreement. The goal is your attention to reign. What Slopaganda tries to do is to crowd the space so that any particular truth has to fight for oxygen. That is a different theory of victory, and it is very well suited to social media platforms. These productions sit at the interface of three actor types. We have the militant producers with a political horizon. We have the para-institutional actors adjacent to power, but not always formally under it. We have the participatory publics who remix, translate, recirculate, and sometimes improve the material. But then we have the braid, which is the challenge. Traditional countermeasures of propaganda often, target or disinformation target one layer: state attribution, platform takedowns, moderation, sanctions. But the formation is distributed, and by the time one piece is removed, the format has already learned to travel. And if we follow all that President Trump shares online every day, we know that the space is already overcrowded. One mistake is to assume that short content is shallow content. It can be, but not always. Fast production economies do not automatically produce symbolic poverty. The strongest capsules are not thin, they are condensed. Density per second is the measure to watch today. 15 seconds of a Lego clip or a Trump synthetic video on Truth Social can do framing work that a 2,000-word op-ed or a press conference cannot. That is not a failure of journalism. It is a structural advantage of the short, effective format in an attention economy. So what do we do? Okay, when we have fake and deepfakes and stuff like that, detection is necessary, but detection is not sufficient. Forensic tools matter, but provenance standards matter, watermarking and C2PA matter, platform moderation matters, but none of that replace public interpretation. The defense is technical and cultural, mostly cultural. People need to read whether form, source, frame, circulation, and effect, because the next problem is not only can we detect the fake, it is can we still understand what is happening to us as we watch. The fourth movement, the counter visibility, and this is where the analysis becomes more complicated because we are trained to see fake or AI generated content as deception, when in fact some of them, especially the Lego movies, carry realities of the ground that travel poorly through classical news. Some render perceivable what other media render invisible. That does not make them automatically true, of course, but it does mean we cannot dismiss them as noise. It is a struggle over what can be seen, felt, and publicly recognized. And going back to sub-information, when information is filtered, withheld, or deleted, such formats are needed. And when I talk about counter-visibility, I mean the act of forcing something into public perception when it would otherwise remain unseen, unfelt, or morally illegible. Some formats translate war into popular language without erasing its moral charge. That is why they work. They cross the threshold of indifference. But counter-visibility is selective. It has silences, it has frames, it has politics. So counter-visibility may not always be truth, right? But it also, it is not nothing. So if we collapse that distinction, we will misunderstand the whole terrain. And the dynamic is not asymmetrical. All sides are now fighting in the same aesthetic ecosystem. US-aligned and pro-Trump ecosystems also mobilize popular culture. They use SpongeBob, Iron Man, Superman, Call of Duty, Wii, gaming logic, superhero logic, meme logic. The use of popular culture is no longer what makes any actor singular. Everyone is using it. The difference lies in how references are articulated: satire, mourning, accusation, humiliation, counter-visibility. Whoever reads the ecosystem best gains narrative ground. The broader point is this: when political actors knowingly use AI generative content, it becomes performance. It becomes a way to occupy attention. And that means the question, is this AI, is no longer enough. Sometimes the answer is yes, and everyone already knows it. The better question is, what is this AI generated object doing politically? And that is the literacy shift that we need to have. Here's another example of a video shared to mock mainstream media. So I'm going to share it very quickly with you.
Welcome back to our final broadcast, ladies and gentlemen.
So this specific object matters, but what matters is the environment, right? This is the environment your audiences, people who are visiting museums and other, they encounter. Feeds are saturated with synthetic, semi-synthetic, satirical, affective, ambiguous content. By the time people enter a museum, a library, an archive, a school, or a cultural program, their interpretive environment has already been shaped. They have already been trained by the feed that they're watching, right? So cultural institutions are not meeting a neutral public. They are meeting publics whose attention, trust, humor, suspicion, and moral reflexes have already been worked on. So the struggle is no longer true versus false, verified versus fake, accurate versus distorted, factual versus fabricated. It is also visible versus invisible, memorable versus forgettable, shareable versus inert, morally intelligible versus morally illegible. If we defend only the left column, we lose the right column by default, and the right column is where publics increasingly live. And lastly, the first movement is about cultural institutions, how they are not peripheral, because the competencies under attack here are not only technical, they are interpretive, visual literacy, source literacy, memory literacy, frame literacy. These are not side issues for cultural institutions, they are your terrain. You are on the front line of information warfare. Museums teach the reading of objects, libraries teach the reading of sources, archives teach the reading of memory, schools teach all the three at once, right? These are exactly the capacities needed now. Cultural institutions are among the few public spaces where people can still slow down, look carefully, ask better questions, and interpret images, narratives, memory, and power with others nearby. And that matters because the feed rewards reaction. Cultural institutions can still teach interpretation. And that is not nostalgic, that is strategic. So here's the question this reality forces us to ask. What interpretive competencies become necessary when war circulates in the forms of entertainment, toys, memes, and generative animation? That question is not rhetorical, right? It's a design brief for education, for museums, for libraries, for archives, for public programming, for anyone trying to sustain shared reality under synthetic conditions. And I have a very quick proposal. So I was thinking about 5 competencies. First, read the form, not only the fact. What is the format doing before the caption arrives? Second, trace the chain of circulation. Who made it? Who relayed it? Who translated it? Who benefits? Third, distinguish satire, propaganda, and counter visibility. The same tool can serve different political functions. Fourth, name the affective register, indignation, irony, grief, belonging. Name it out loud. Naming helps the viewer notice what is happening to them. And fifth, ask who becomes visible and who does not. The model generates, the ecosystem weaponizes, and literacy lives between those two verbs. So what can cultural institutions do? Treat AI-generated formats as culture object worth display, comparison, and slow reading. Contextualize, place the object inside its chain of circulation. Never show the artifact alone in if the itinerary is the real data. Teach, move from spot the fake to read the frame, and host, create spaces where disagreement can happen publicly, carefully, and on the record. And one more verb, which is very important, is document, because other institutions will need the templates. And let me restate the argument one final time. The struggle is no longer only over what is true, it is also over what becomes visible, memorable, shareable, and morally intelligible. That is why the response cannot be only technical, it has to be culture, and cultural institutions are part of the defense. Thank you.